Welcome again, everybody, to Pages Promotions. We are doing our summer 2020 virtual book festival. And hey, there's Chelsea walking in. So we've got some people in the room tonight. Hi, Chelsea, welcome. We're just going to have this really cool conversation with yet another really cool indie author. So this is Mackenzie Flohr. Mackenzie, wave, say hi. That's Mackenzie.
Do it more properly there.
Yeah. So the reason she's waving a wand is because she wrote this book called Rite of Wands. And then she wrote its sequel as well, which just recently came out this year, Rite of Abnegation. Did I pronounce that right? Yeah, there it is.
Cool.
So we're going to talk about those tonight and some other stuff. As ever, once again, if anybody has any questions as we're moving along, don't feel like you're stepping on my toes. Just jump right in and step on top of me and ask your questions. That's the way I like it. So Mackenzie, let's start off with Rite of Wands. And can you give us a brief synopsis of the book, pretty please?
Oh, absolutely. So the Rite of Wands is a personal growth story that emphasizes on and revolves around a 12-year-old boy by the name of McKinnon, who is a wizard, though he has not gained his powers. So what he does is he goes through a ceremony called the Rite of Wands, which is actually kind of like Christmas Carol. So you're going to see a glimpse of his past, his present, and his future. His future, he sees a very bad doomsday prophecy, and so he becomes obsessed and angry and decides that he's going to alter his fate. The series in general is really a personal growth / redemption story where you're going to see how Myrta dealing with the Shreya, which is eerily very similar to COVID-19.
Yeah.
Be like that. But it is what it is.
Thanks for the predictory nature of your fiction. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it happens to be the wizard who is also, in medieval time, he's a doctor. So you can get an idea of what it would have been like to see COVID-19 back in the 1200s.
Oh, okay. Okay. So Rite of Abnegation is the sequel to Rite of Wands, right?
Yes.
So can you tell us the synopsis for that book?
Yeah, it's a bridge book. So there is a scenario that happens in the very first book where there's a gap of about 20 years and readers were like, what the heck happened? And I was like, who cares? It's not important. But for me being a plotzer, meaning that I both write by the seat of my pants and I outline, started writing the second book, which was a direct sequel to Rite of Wands, and Myrta goes, nope, threw and took out my outline. I decided to give me the Rite of Abnegation, which is the story that happens within those 20 years. It reflects on, you get to see him grow more as a apothecist and seeing how he has to deal with a big dilemma that happens in the world of the kingdom of Fangirling, where they are being attacked by you could kind of say a demon in a way, but it is a creature of mystic mystery that comes from Ireland and Scottish medieval mythology. So you get to see that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. You know what? I forgot to do something. We have to interrupt our conversation for just a second because I was supposed to do this before we started our conversation, and I, completely forgot because my brain is not functioning appropriately.
Okay.
So for the summer book festival, the virtual book festival, we're giving away a super snazzy prize box. And today was the day I need to draw that winner. And I told everybody on Facebook I would do that before we started your thing. So now I got to stop and do this. So I apologize, but we're giving away a hat, a pen, a notebook, and a cocoa mug, which you can also use for other beverages, but cocoa's my thing. So and so what I did is I got this really snazzy, nifty little name picker thing. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Yeah.
I put all of the all of the qualifying people who entered the contest into it. Oh no, the wand. Ah!
Well, I see what the winner is.
So there it is. Let's see if we can do that. I'm trying to do this live so nobody thinks it's rigged. And then I'm gonna push the little button. Let's see if I can do this.
Oh.
Is it gonna go?
No.
Oh, come on. There we go. There it spins. And it's
Oh, it is
Diana
Diana
D. That's actually,
Wow.
so she could not make it tonight. She's been coming to a lot of our Zoom meetings. So she wins the snazzy swag box, and I will announce that on Facebook after we're done with our thing. So thank you for the really incorrigible interruption. But okay, so let's get back to our thing now.
Back to regularly scheduled programming.
Yes, very good, Troy. Thank you. So I'm curious about the research that you've done to do the world building, the character building for this story. Where did you get your research, and first of all, how did you decide that medieval time period is what you wanted to do?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story because this has been researching for over a decade. And it originally started with, I was very interested in the Tudor era, but I ended up going kind of the wrong direction and ended up in Germany where we had Friedrich the Great. And I found that my Friedrich the Great was very similar to the Friedrich that I had created in my book, though he only appears in for like maybe a second in the Rite of Wands, so he's not very introduced yet, but that character I actually ended up basing off of Friedrich the Great. And so there are some early similarities between them. I found even their backgrounds were very similar. So I found doing that was the way to kind of start. However, my companion to Prince Dior, Orland, he is a co-main character. And he is a wizard that's a soothsayer. He's Scottish, and he is very Scottish. When you try reading, everything is phonetic. And I do that on purpose because I want him to seem to be an outcast, to be that he doesn't belong. And it's not only obvious to the reader, but it's obvious to anybody who would be in that world knowing, well, you got the Scottish person here, and you got British people talking all around you. It doesn't make any sense. So I ended up doing a lot of research about Ireland, and I ended up reading a lot about the potato famine, about the Black Death, which was an influence for the Sharia. And that's really where it came to. I ended up going medieval time because I honestly really love medieval. I've been into Renaissance fairs since I can't even remember how long. So I wanted to really, I felt like I lived in that era, so I wanted to make a series to be like that.
Okay, cool. One of my very dear friends is a professional knight.
Oh.
He jousts for a living, and he's actually the technical director for the Pennsylvania Renaissance Festival. So I definitely understand how you can be thoroughly ensconced in that. I mean, it's like cosplay for the non-cosplayer.
Yes,
right?
Very much so, especially if you end up actually fighting, which is something that I have on my bucket list to actually do sometime, just so I can make it a little bit more realistic. If my characters are going to be fighting and sword fighting, I kind of want to be able to say, this is what it'd be like, instead of just assuming this is what it's going to be like, that showing versus telling type of thing.
Sure, right, yeah. This friend of mine was also the fight consultant, I guess you'd call him, for the film Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So when it came time for Zachary to do that medieval stuff, when he was doing Hamlet or other Shakespearean stuff at school, we had a direct connection to somebody who studies that stuff and knows it and stuff. So I certainly understand why you would be so connected or feel linked to that environment. There's a real draw there,
yeah.
Especially since it's based on an actual conglomerate of people. You know, this was a real society. It's not just something that we're making up for fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Although it's fun, you know. Anybody else have any questions right now for Mackenzie?
I do.
Yes, go Chelsea.
Can I fangirl for like 1 second, please? Because
Of course.
so I met Mackenzie last year at the Sterling Fest during like that thing, and I bought your book then. And I have the poster from your book, and it's in my classroom. And I just loved this book so much. Like, it was like a fangirl's dream. I always describe it to people as like, it's like a little bit of Harry Potter, a little bit of Lord of the Rings, and like a little bit of Doctor Who, all in one book. Like, it is so good. I'm actually really excited that you said that you wrote this next one is like more of a midquel. So my question, as I brought my wand too, because
awesome.
I prepared. Well, let me tell you, when I met Mackenzie, she was dressed up in like Hogwarts robes. I'm like, all right, you already sold me. Like, that was all it took, was seeing her in like a Harry Potter robe. I'm like, all right, like, let's do this. So my question is, as you continue writing, how many books do you see this series being?
Well, I can announce that I recently have switched contracts. I now have a traditional contract, and there's going to be 7 books in total. So
yay!
Yeah, so it's going to be 6. Essentially, we're looking at a book a year, though, because of the contract just starting now. The next book we'll have a year in between. So I'm going to be filling that out with a lot of podcasts, behind the scenes stuff. So readers will still stay engaged in the Rite of Wands universe, and then get thrown into the next book, which is going to be called the Rite of Sangre, which is, Sangre stands for blood in Spanish. So you can kind of get an idea where we're headed.
I'm excited. Like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Like, I was like, it's not long enough. Where's like, I need more. Like, I like flew through it so fast. Like, it was so good. I cannot recommend this enough. I actually just passed your book on to another teacher friend of mine, because she does read alouds with her students, and they did the first Harry Potter book. So at the start of next school year, she's going to be reading your book aloud to her class.
Oh, that's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, and if she would like even have an author to come and visit, I'd be happy to do that too. And same with your book too.
I would love that.
And it's quite interesting that you've got Loki in the background, because the actor that is, and this is a little inside tip, Loki, the actor that plays Loki, actually, I pictured him to be Lachlan. So it's...
So right next to Loki, right here, this is a signed poster, and Tom Hiddleston signed it too.
Awesome.
I saw him in a play on Broadway.
Cool. I have
It's my little Tom Hiddleston corner.
I have not met Tom yet, but that is on my bucket list of some.
Oh, I got a selfie with him. He's so nice.
Chelsea seriously stalked the guy, and she has photographic evidence. Yeah.
I did. I just have a feeling Mackenzie and I are going to become best friends. Like, we're going to make this happen.
Yeah, totally. That's kind of, in a way, kind of what happened to Matt Smith and me, but it was more of an accident. He kind of more showed up where I was going already, and like, well, hi.
How convenient. Yeah.
Just kind of worked that way. And well, you brought David Tennant with him too last time, so that helped as well for me, because I wrote Orland for David using his accent, because I really loved how much his very strong accent is in Broadchurch, and learned that was actually discovered that was actually his real accent. I'm like, ooh, so that helps write Orland.
So you've got a 7-book series planned. That's a lot of work ahead of you for, I'm always intrigued. This comes up a lot. But I'm always intrigued. There's another author who's going to be with us later this month, Sherry Burton. She has a 17-book series planned.
Wow.
And I've talked to other authors who also have series planned. And every single one of them, to a number, claim to be pantsers. I want to know how you can plan a series and be a pantser. I need that explained to me, because my brain is not grasping that concept.
Diana,
it's hard.
I can't believe it.
Yeah. And it's
What was that? I'm sorry. What was that, Kate?
I'm admitting it right now, recorded. I'm kind of agreeing with you there. Never thought that day would come when it comes to plotter versus pantser, but in this, I concede you win.
That I win?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I don't get it. I don't get the. How do you? No. Mm-mm. You can't be a pantser and plan a series. I mean, I need to understand how you go about doing that.
Yeah, and that's a tough question because I'm both. So it's like I do both, and for me actually being I don't know if that's being true for all hybrid or how the publishing industry works, but in the traditional, when I had to pitch the Rite of Wands as a 7-book series, I had to actually plot out synopsis, so long pages. They expect at least that 500 words, but mine ended up being like 2, 3, 4, 5 pages because as the books get more on, and this will help for Chelsea too, because she said she likes one, she felt it was way too short. They're going to get a lot longer, and starting from book 3 onward, we're going to be looking more like George R. Martin, J.K. Rowling type size books. They're going to be a lot more. Just so all you're going to see in book 3, how the storylines are now starting to mesh together. They already were, but now you're really going to see in August how everybody's kind of intertwined, and how it all one storyline affects the other. So
so I think today on camera you need to step up and go, "Hi, my name is Mackenzie and I'm a plotter," because you really.
I'm a planner. I have to be that way, and it depends on the series too. What I'm doing. If it's my Doctor Who series, that is just plot. It's just there's no really little room for that. For this series, though, I do say that I am a planner because I do give Myrta a little bit of a leeway. I will write down what we're going to be doing, but I let him dictate the series and make it go as it is. So if he changes something slightly, I just kind of go with what he wants to do, and all the other characters kind of seem to go in line with him.
So you just mentioned the Doctor Who series. Can you talk to us about those books for a little bit? And I don't have one handy. Do you have a cover so we can?
I don't, but I do have
Okay.
I have a picture of one. We can look. I can get one of those, but I don't have it. I'm still in the same spot as I was last time, where I am still having this little. How am I going to get a copy of the book?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still on that, and now that we're getting this particular, it's a different publisher. This is Riverdale Avenue. They came up with this idea, which I thought was really brilliant, and they approached me back, I want to say it was August maybe last year, where maybe it was a little bit later than that. It was right before series 12 started off, and they approached me and they said, hey, we would like to do a series called Binge Watcher Guide, where somebody who is new to Who or somebody who has been with Doctor Who for a long time could understand and appreciate it from a non-fiction point of view. So I will do reviews. I give some interviews of behind the scenes. I'll give each story. I will even go into more depth, especially series 12, because if you're not a classic Who, I will be honest, you probably got lost several times. Like, what the heck? Especially with the last episode, The Timeless Children. I had one person go, Mackenzie, what did I just watch? I'm like, don't worry, honey, I got you. There's just so much. So I dig into both classic Who and current Who and make it sense so that those who are into Who, but they might want to know more about Who, there you go. So Binge Watcher Guide is going to be 13 books, one book representing each Doctor. So the first series, 11 book for Jodie Whittaker is where we started. That's out now. And I will be building a series 12 that's going to be going together in that same book. So I won't say buy it now because it's going to be larger. And so unless you really want to read it now, I mean, you could.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Mackenzie at this point before we go any further?
I've got one.
So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Troy, go ahead.
Oh, so I'm kind of out of the loop on this whole Doctor Who thing with you. Is that some fan fiction thing, or is that an official writing for that?
I can't say it's necessarily official because it's not directly tied to BBC. However, I do know the lawyers, and I know the person that runs BBC Books. They don't seem to have any issue with that as long as there's, you know, no like trademark or copyright on the cover, which that's a whole nother story that I've told Diana about. But it's more of a nonfiction series. So it's all the behind the scenes type of interest in way of learning about Doctor Who. So you'll learn about, especially if you're new to Who and you wanted to start with, say, with Jodie Whittaker, right, when series, say, 13 came out, or if you wanted to say, hey, tomorrow I'm going to get HBO Max and I'm going to start binge watching Doctor Who. My book from Jodie Whittaker, it goes from all the Doctors from the 1st to 13th. So you won't be lost at all. You understand how each actor got cast, how they worked with, how things actually affected things, such as, for example, it has taken over 50 years for them to finally cast a female doctor. A lot of people were surprised to discover that wasn't actually the first time that they had attempted to do that, that it actually was originally pitched by the people who initiated Doctor Who back in 1963, had actually given that idea. Verity Lambert and her co-worker both had suggested that number 5 and number 7 be females, but because of some political stuff, that didn't happen.
Well, that, you know, political stuff so often gets in the way of our really enjoyable fiction. So it's no great surprise there. Hey, did you have a question?
Yeah, so it's one that I've asked a few times, and I'm going to put kind of a twist on it. So from what I've found and books that I've read and authors that I've talked to, is even though there definitely is a historical, because we've talked in the past about, okay, fantasy where you kind of build your world versus what I write in where I don't kind of get to build the world because it's, you know, I write spy thrillers. So what I've found though is a lot of times fans of fantasy, and especially when they are kind of taking place in this place in our history, sometimes have to be more accountable for sticking to the facts and not stepping on, you know, definitely established history. So how do you keep track of everything? And what would you say, or have you said to a fan that may have gotten a little bit butthurt about it? I'm just going to say that.
Well,
Somebody whose nose got out of joint because of the history. Let's phrase it that way.
That's better.
Yeah. In fact, that's actually I never actually got to even say anything to this particular reader, but they left me a nice, nasty review on Amazon in regards to the historical reference to my series. They pretty much, the way that they wrote it is they didn't understand what the concept of fantasy was, that they thought it was a historical fiction book. And I was like, where did they get that out of there? So my answer would be is a lot of times with fantasy, and this is not always true, but a lot of times what helps somebody out when they're world building is to look at an area and their history. And you may want to intertwine it into it, especially if you found several things that complement, or you could say are coincidences. Whereas like in mine, I had the Shreya, there was the Black Plague. There is a mysterious island off of Ireland, which in the 1300s there actually was on a map, though it's not confirmed whether that actually was a location because it's now not there. So we don't know really if it is. So when I found that out, I decided I'd intertwine that into my series as well, since there already was that. And then, of course, I put in information about Friedrich the Great, specifically Anya, who is the queen. She is a little bit based off of his mother, and a little bit also based off, you could say, from Dangerous Liaisons, the main character that Glenn Close got to play. So it's fun to kind of intertwine those things. I'm not sure if I really answered that question very well, though.
No, it did. That's pretty much exactly what I was asking.
Good.
How do I know there's a dragon in your series?
Really?
How do you write in other creatures? You know, how do you, I mean, dragons have a lore all their own that's been around for centuries. So we kind of have a history for that, but do you incorporate any other non-human creatures in your stories? And if so, where do they come up? Where do they come from? How do you build those?
So that kind of leads right into the second book, where we do have the character of the Shulkeus, which is he's made up. But I did actually use an idea that came from Ireland and Scottish mythology, which was based off of the Krampus. And I ended up giving the Shulkeus, he's got wings of an eagle, tail of a snake, body of a lion, claws of an eagle. So he's a very scary creature. So for him, I wanted to do something kind of like what J.K. Rowling did with Fantastic Beasts and build some of that mythology that you would see in fantasies. Something that I had intended on doing with the Rite of Wands is going a little bit on the mythology level, but it wasn't ready in the very first book. It just wasn't appropriate at that time. But yeah, this. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was listening.
I think that the Shulkeus is one of those creatures that is non-human, that is very involved in the second book. Though Lord Cato here, who is my dragon, I wanted him to be, I actually explained his lore and how he existed and how he became part of Averna, which is actually, fun fact, is from Ireland is what it means, though it is an alternate world of Ireland. So it doesn't follow Ireland's history and all that 100%. It gives me a little bit more of a freedom. So that also kind of leads into Katie's question there too.
Awesome. Anybody else have any questions? I know, Kate, you've got one sitting in the back of your head because you sent me a text about it, which is awesome. You guys want to send me a text and you don't want to talk, I'm perfectly okay with that. Or if you just want to get a question out before you lose it, you can just put it in the text. I'm fine with that too. Does anybody have any other questions?
I'll do mine just because that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, go.
I'm gonna forget it.
I know.
So when I remember, because I read Rite of Wands a while ago, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's kind of like a twist where Myrtus kind of towards the end of it starts turning into not the character that he was for the whole thing. Yeah. Is that something that we'll see throughout the series? And how do you plan on handling kind of this, light and dark side of this character that we've established?
Yeah, that is something I kind of hinted at the very, very beginning, though I suspect that probably people missed it, where Lord Cato says, there is darkness in your heart. And that is the case for Myrtus, you could say in a way, he is burdened by this idea that he has to save the world by coming up with this cure for the Shreya, and that it ends up affecting him mentally a lot more than he intended, that his obsession leads to him going down this dark road. And yes, I will be actually, book 3 is where we're going to start seeing where this darkness is going to start coming out. It's not necessarily meaning that he's going to becoming like Baltimore. That's not the case. He's still a protagonist. He will be the protagonist all the way through the series. But you are going to see a little bit more of a dark side, a little bit more of a emotional understanding of seeing how this Shreya is affecting him mentality, as he's really, you'll find it is more of a personal growth story where there will be a redemption, because you're probably referring to the incident that happens with the servants, that a lot of people, even myself, when as the author, when I wrote that, I'm like, why did you do that? Why? No, why? Well, then he ended up telling me in the second book, oh, this is really what happened. And then I'm like, oh, well, I still wouldn't do that, but I understand it now. I still wouldn't do that, though.
Anybody else have any other questions?
A statement, not a question.
Yeah, go Troy.
I like how there's continuity between your first and second book, how the look and feel of it.
Yeah.
Because I'm all about that, so.
Thank you. And that will be the case with all of the covers. There's going to be the continuity with it. And I'm also planning on writing the series where not necessarily, if anybody here has never read the Rite of Wands and you wanted to start with Rite of Abnegation, you definitely can. You won't get lost. I can promise that. It's the way I wrote it. I actually wrote it for the fans who, because of the contract issues, there was actually about 3 years difference between when Rite of Wands was published and Rite of Abnegation. So I assumed as the author that either people have read it and they've completely forgot what happened, or they haven't read it at all and they're just coming into it. So giving them that little bit of, okay, this is what happened, and this is how I'm going to catch them all up, so that way they can go back into it if they want to.
Cool.
Awesome. Do you see yourself writing any other genres?
Yes.
Or I should say, and what genre do you see yourself never writing?
Oh.
So two-part question.
Never would be erotica, because I just don't do the romance. I just don't. It's very hard for me to, even in my real life romance, it's not really my type. It's just not. I guess I'm just way too much of a, I don't know, maybe I love romantic or something like that, but it doesn't actually come to be. I more see my characters doing that. So romance would be something, especially erotica, I would never ever do. For what I will be doing, I actually am working on a sci-fi novel. It's actually written in the style of Star Trek Discovery, and it pays homage to Star Trek Voyager. So if you are a Star Trek fan, that will be something I'm working on currently, and it is scheduled to be to the publisher by the end of the year. So it's going to be called Starship Telstar, which it stars a female captain that is not human.
A female captain who's not human.
Mm-hmm.
Of a Star Trek-esque environment?
Yes.
Is it
Oh.
one that's already established as a Star Trek race?
It's not a Star Trek race. It's something that is not at all, because it's not technically in a Star Trek official book, but it does have a feel to it. The female, specifically the captain, is very much like Janeway, though her background is different, though she's very scientific like Janeway, a little bit like Kirk in the way that you make your decisions right then and there without really thinking it through. So she's kind of a little bit of a combination of the two. She's actually kind of like a dragon in a way. And she's got not quite the same look as Kato, but she's got some red hair, purple face. I'm actually working with somebody to draw her, to create her so that people could see my Captain Talia. Her first name is Marina, so it's interesting. And she is, yeah, she's gonna be from a universe that does exist out there, and that we just haven't found yet. And she comes to Earth because of an event that is said to possibly happen, though hasn't happened yet, and I hope never does happen. But the scientists say is going to happen. Probably not in our lifetime, but kind of get the idea there. And it will be evolving around the story of the Voyager, which, if you're not sure, if you don't know what that is a satellite that is currently in outer space that is traveling to find, you could say, people that aren't from the Earth. And it has all the languages. It's like a little disc, a gold disc.
Yep.
Of hello, and that is the premise of the series. Is
That was that actual scientific device that you're talking about, the Voyager, was actually the focus of the first Star Trek film.
oh really? I didn't know that.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
So it's
That's
very Star Trek-like, but it's your own.
exactly. Yeah.
Sweet.
They found it floating around somewhere, and it had merged with another entity.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right. And it now called itself Voyager.
Voyager. I was gonna
That's
say. I was
right.
like, wait a second. I remember it being Voyager.
Yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
but it actually came from Voyager, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That
I'm a little bit of a NASA nut, so yeah, little bit of a NASA nut.
Yeah. And the way that ended, I thought there was going to be a direct sequel to that one, but
No, not in that universe. They don't have direct sequels. They just have one more storyline that builds from existing tidbits.
well,
That's
3 was a sequel to 2.
maybe. It depends on your definition of sequel, right, Troy? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, they did. If I remember right, didn't they go back to that planet? The 2 was
Yeah,
on?
2 they did that planet, and in 3 they went back to that planet looking for Spock.
That's right.
right, yeah, because he kind of sort of almost died.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's interesting that you're talking about that because that particular era I'm familiar with everything except for the original and the original movies, and that's what I'm actually binge watching now, is going through all of those. I went through all of Discovery and then found out the storyline that I wanted to write kind of already is in Discovery, but it's in a totally different way. So I'm like, oh, okay. And then I found out that my idea is in a Voyager novel. So it's kind of weird how that intertwines. When I found that out, I'm like, well, this is perfect because it's already been written but told in a totally different way.
Yeah, so that's I think one of the great advantages and simultaneously one of the great pitfalls of being a fiction author is
Yeah.
that you discover influences from really strange places. So that leads me to this question. Where's the strangest place you found an influence that's made it into your story, and what was that influence?
Do you know, to tell the truth, I haven't found anything. Well, I take that back. I actually did have something. It's actually in one of the things that Myrta talks about in when he is, and the way that my narrator read it, I was like, that wasn't exactly what I was intending, but it sounded all right. There is a scene where Myrta is talking about these worms that go up to your brain, and that was actually research that I had found when I was trying to find out what did they use to treat the Black Death, and I found that out, and I'm like, this is kind of creepy, but this is cool. I see Myrta doing this. So I wrote it into the book talking about these slugs. They were slugs. I said worms, but they were slugs. Slugs that go to the brain, and then they would make you die. Very gross death.
Like a zombie.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
a zombie,
yeah. There was something similar to that in, again, the Wrath of Khan. He used those little bugs and he stuck them in the guy's ears, and they went into their heads and messed with their brains. It's a pretty graphically icky kind of thing, especially since I'm ear sensitive. I was like cringing through that.
I still can't watch that scene.
I know,
And
I know.
nothing freaks me out, but I will watch all of them, but I can't watch that specific scene. As horrible as the special effects are, I still can't watch that.
I know, and it's exactly because I'm ear sensitive, because I have a hearing loss, and mess with people's ears, and I gotta go, no, that's just pushing a line that I can't do. So
and that's interesting too. Is anybody here like a video game nutty like me and is familiar with The Last of Us by any chance?
Yeah. As friends, I'm telling you.
Yeah. We see we're kindred spirits, Chelsea. We totally are. And that the sequel just came out, actually, I think it was today. So it's kind of funny that came up. But there's the influence for their, which I can't think of what their zombie-like creatures were called. That actually was created based off of something that was found out where ants are getting invaded by these like mushrooms, and they literally would take over their bodies. So it's,
in the Amazon, yeah, I've seen that.
and then they would go up
creepy.
high on a stick and then just kind of change and alternate. It was just
it's very creepy. It's like, yeah, there is actual real life scientific precedence for zombies.
yeah.
In fact, Michael, we were talking one night with our friend Chuck Stern, who's also an author and a psychologist, and he was telling us about in Brazil how they had this illness that was taking over people, and it made them appear to be dead. I mean, their life signs would drop to a point. They would bury them still alive because they thought, the town doctor, whatever, thought that they had actually died. And then they would claw their way out of their graves and have almost total memory loss because of the trauma of the illness. And so it was as if they were walking dead because they didn't recognize their family, and they called it the zombie disease. It's a real thing.
Yeah, I remember reading about that. In fact, I think I watched something recently about that too. And
It's pretty creepy.
Yeah, just it's a creepy stuff back then, and even just some of the stuff. I have a book that I kind of nicknamed it Myrta's Brain because it has all to do with potions, and at the time when I bought it, this was back when Borders was still around, I had taken it up to the retail person, and they didn't want to sell it to me because they're like, "You're not going to kill somebody with this, are you?" I'm like, so that's my favorite resource book.
Awesome. Books that Borders don't want to sell you. That's great. Can you ever imagine yourself writing for children?
Oh, I have thought about it. I'm not sure if I would be able to make it so simple. I'm not sure. No, it would be something. I won't say no. This is not something that I've ever really thought about actually doing, other than I'd like to do some type of story that has to do with cats, and maybe even like an educational book about feral cats specifically, since I have a lot of knowledge and have worked with feral colonies myself.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have had to rehabilitate cats as well, and I feel like still that there, even as adults, that there's still a lot of misinformation out there about how to actually approach the feral and how to help them out, instead of letting a cat just roam around and get pregnant and then so many times a year, 15 plus times a year, and then have 4, 5, 6, 7 kittens all at one time. It's crazy.
Yeah. My little brother once did a science project in 7th grade. He got 2 mice, male and female, from the pet store, and built a habit trail, and he bred them. And in, I think it was like 8 weeks, we had 72 mice in the house.
Wow.
And my mother said, "Yeah, we're done with this experiment. Write up your
Damn.
report." And we sold the mice back to the pet shop, and they used them as snake food.
Wow.
Yeah. 72 mice in the house at one time was a bit much, even for my
Yeah.
mother, who loved animals, so.
Yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
would be even too much even for the cellar, even knowing there are a number of rats in the cellar, and Mirta doesn't seem to have any problems with them, but they're there.
Right, yeah. Any other questions from anyone before we wrap up our party for this evening?
How do you go about marketing?
That's a good question. For my series, it was very unique in how I marketed it. I found that originally I thought that Harry Potter fans would be, kind of like no-brainer. Turned out that most people who are Harry Potter fans don't read the Rite of Wands. They are not interested at all, and it ended up being Doctor Who fans that were more so the sci-fi fans. But in my case, I mention Matt Smith quite often, and especially in the back of my book, I will mention like the little things of the thank you, because he is the reason why this series exists. He is Matt Smith from Doctor Who, like the 11th Doctor, was Mirta to me. And I actually had a wand crafted by the people who did the Harry Potter movies. I gave him a design of what I wanted the wand to look like. I just wanted it something that's fun, didn't really think anything more of that. But it ended up that this is actually Matt Smith's signature, and his mom and him are fans of the series. So that is what I ended up doing, is I ended up pitching the series now to the Doctor Who fans as well as the Matt Smith fans, and it seems like it's gotten its own little, you could say, its own clique now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Anything else? No? Chelsea, do you have anything else lurking in your brain?
Yeah, can we be friends?
Of course.
Wands up, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Before we go, Mackenzie, if you can let everybody know how they can find your books.
Oh, absolutely. So there's a couple different options. I'm basically available at any of the retail stores, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. There is a website, MackenzieFlohr.com, as well as theriteofwands.com, where you can find a list of tons of different places that carry the book, including Who North America, which is, I don't think there's anybody here that is from Indiana, but if you ever do go that way, they have autographed books as well as the poster that Chelsea got. I will be doing some more signings with them out there. I still have to give them Rite of Abnegation though. But that's pretty much where you can find me there. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and I will be soon coming to Twitch.
Perfect. Okay. So I guess that wraps it up for tonight. This has been the Pages Promotions Virtual Book Festival. I keep wanting to call it the Facebook thing. It's not really, but it is really. So we're doing this all through the rest of the month of June. Find us on Facebook, find us on YouTube, and you can always connect back to us at pagespromotions.com. We hope to see more of you as the days go on. We've got more really fun authors and more contests. So come back and visit us again. Mackenzie, thank you for your time tonight. I do appreciate it.
Oh,
Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank
We'll see you
you.
next
Thank you.
time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.